One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Y'all, I am so excited about today's guest interview because I'm just like blown away by how amazing this conversation was about women podcasting. So, fellas, I would love for you to stay around and hear all of the amazing information that is in this conversation today. But I'll just be really honest with you, it's mostly for the ladies because I'm talking to someone who's been in the industry for a while and has seen the landscape completely change. And I like to say that she's been a really big part of some of the change that we've seen that's for the better and that's more an inclusive environment for all female podcasters. So I cannot wait to dive into today's episode. So let's just get started. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Because if you've been thinking about creating a podcast for a while, well, I'm so glad you found this show. Think of this as the shortcut/time-saving version of searching Google and YouTube for hours and hours trying to figure out the world of podcasting. Trust me, as a busy mama of 3, I get it. You don't have a lot of time to be spent or wasted, I should say, searching the web, trying to find all the right ideas and all the amazing things that are out there, and you just end up overwhelmed. Trust me, I've been there, done that, took home the souvenir. But this podcast is going to help you in practical ways because twice a week we'll be delivering episodes that are going to give you steps to help you create a podcast your audience can't wait to listen to. So let's get right to it, shall we? Have you been wanting to start a podcast? You've been thinking about it. It feels right. You just know this is the next thing that my business needs. Well, I encourage you to sign up for my 5-day podcast bootcamp. This is a thing that you have been looking for. It is a 5-day video series where I walk you through exactly how to start, launch, and market your podcast. And I throw in some more information about planning strategies and being consistent and how you can make the most out of your podcast from day one. So sign up for our 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp at crystalprofit.com/podcast bootcamp. And do it already. You know that you've been wanting to, so just bite the bullet and join us. Okay, as we're talking about all things podcasting, I wanted to take a quick second and remind you that the digital course, Profit Podcasting, the doors are opening. They're actually opening this week. So if you're listening to this podcast in real time, the doors are opening on Friday, August 30th at 7 a.m. Central Time, and they'll only be open for a short period of time. So if you've listened to a few podcast episodes or you've enjoyed any of the other content that I've put out on social media or on YouTube, you're going to love this digital course because I walk you through everything you need to know in order to start, launch, and market your podcast in just 30 days. So if you want to be the first to know when doors open, then go to crystalprofit.com/podcast course and join the waitlist. Now, if you're listening to this after the fact, you can still go to that link and be able to join the waitlist and see whenever the course is going to be available at future dates. But if you're listening right now in real time, then go check it out and be sure to get on the waitlist. But guys, I'm so excited to be bringing you today Jessica Kupferman, who is the co-host and the co-founder of the She Podcast brand, which currently supports over 12,000 female podcasters and has a digital marketing reach of over 50,000 content creators. She Podcast Live, the live event created for the She Podcast community, was funded spring 2019 via a Kickstarter for double the goal and sold, get this, 200 tickets in 30 days. Obviously, the need is felt out there in the marketplace for female podcasters to get together and talk about podcasting because it's so amazing. Y'all know I just totally geek out on this stuff. But Jessica specifically specializes in marketing and monetizing within the podcast industry and has been featured in magazines and websites such as Entrepreneur, Forbes, Business Insider, Social Media Examiner, and Yahoo Finance. She has also been a featured guest on podcasts such as Entrepreneur on Fire, Peter Shankman's Faster Than Normal, and The New Media Show. She has been honored to speak at the NAB Show, Blog Her, Social Media Marketing World, Podcast Movement, and many other blog and podcasting conferences. This conversation that I had with Jessica was just filled with so many nuggets of wisdom on how to give yourself some grace and just have fun with it. So I had so much fun during this conversation. So here is my interview with Jessica Kupferman. All right, Profit Podcast listeners, I'm so excited to bring to you today our guest, Jessica Kupferman of She Podcast. So welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I just want to dive right into the goodness because we both share a love for podcasting. So I want to know all of the details. Like, how did you get into podcasting? How long have you been doing this? Why do you love it so much? Like, just give us everything.
So I started podcasting because I was an online entrepreneur, not a business coach or a life coach or anything like that. I was a web designer and graphic designer and social media consultant. And I'm the kind of person that has always really been into plays and being on stage, theater, and like chorus and all kinds of crazy stuff when I was a kid. And I kind of was like having ambitions about being a speaker because I missed that one-on-one live interaction. And originally my brilliant idea was to have a live podcast. I thought, well, why doesn't anyone have a live podcast? All these people are missing out. They're so stupid. Well, it turns out that the whole point of having a podcast is that it's on demand listening. So even though that part of my first podcast didn't work out, I decided to start one because I was invited on a friend's and I really wanted some publicity to sort of like, I was getting ready to start some online courses and I wanted to see if I could grow my audience a little bit. So my friend invited me on her show and I was instantly hooked. It was so much like having like a like her own talk show. And I mean, I know that's like in your head, you have your own talk show, but she really ran it like the Tonight Show kind of, and
Yeah.
it stuck with me, and it was so fun and exciting. So I instantly was like, I need to have one of my own podcasts. Also, most of the podcasts that were being done for entrepreneurs back then were men interviewing other men, white dudes interviewing white dudes. And
Right.
so I kind of felt like I wouldn't have a shot getting on any of their shows. So I wanted to be instead the place where all my friends got their publicity, and it worked out. So I did that show for about 2 or 3 years. I got pregnant. I went on maternity. When I came back, I was sort of done having that conversation. I mean, I did 2 shows a week for 2 years, so it's quite a bit of shows. And
Right.
I had just sort of had enough of, I mean, I was also at a point where, because it was one of the first women's entrepreneurial interview shows, I was being pitched more than I was reaching out. And so I was sort of playing this game of see who can use me to grow their audience. And I was becoming impatient with that. And then while I was on maternity leave, you know, Elsie and I had already started She Podcast and the She Podcast group, which is for your listeners, a group of, you know, a Facebook group for just women podcasters. And she was juggling like she was in the circus, trying to like take care of everything and manage the group, manage our show. It just felt like that group of women needed me a lot more than in the entrepreneurial space where some other shows had already started to pop up, et cetera. So, to answer your question about what I love about it, I love not having to wear pants and still get a big audience. I love that I am not breaking my hands writing and creating an arthritis problem, that I can just turn on the microphone and talk and hear. Well, I'd never listen to myself, but, you know, have other people hear what I have to say. And I feel like maybe this is just a theater background, but I feel like tone and inflection and diction and everything about the way you say everything about the way you say something affects how the listener judges you. And when they're reading what you write, you have no control over that experience whatsoever. So you have to be articulate, which I am, but I also feel like I'm not exactly myself when I'm writing. I'm trying to be witty, or, you know, I'm pontificating. Whereas when I'm just talking, you and I, this is just the way I talk, and I'm either going to sound smart or funny or stupid and terrible, but hopefully I have a little bit more control over that. So I really like that aspect of it.
No, I couldn't agree more. Like, especially with, you know, in the world of emails and texting and like everything, like people and social media, everyone could read whatever they want to and whatever you write. But if you say it and you say it slowly, or you say it really fast, or you say it really loud, like people can totally tell. And I love that aspect of podcasting as well.
Yeah.
But I have a few questions because you mentioned, you know, your first show. So when did you actually get started in the world of podcasting? What year was it?
2013.
Okay. So
Yeah.
my question from there is, how much has just everything changed from your first show to where you are today?
So much. First of all, I dread people listening to that very first episode. It was still me trying to do it live. Actually, I think the first 10 episodes are me having attempted to do a video show, and after a 2-hour interview, trying to cut that down to 30 minutes. Like, it was just an editing nightmare. It was 4 hours of editing for a half-hour show. Plus, while I'm recording, and we're kind of doing this right now, where it's like, I'm recording and I want you to feel like I'm talking to you. So I look, you know, in the camera, but if I look at you, I'm actually looking over here. So you can't really tell that I'm looking at. Anyway, while I was recording that for a video podcast, I was very distracted by it. I was also very distracted by my hair. Because my hair is very curly, and I was constantly like fixing it to see if it was out of place. It was just a nightmare. So I took those first 10 episodes and I slapped them up there as my first 10 episodes. And then I just sort of started from there. And then there were a few shows where people were calling in live. I was letting people call in through like Audio Acrobat, and that didn't work out. And then I decided to let it go. So it probably wasn't until like my 20th or 30th episode that I sort of got my shit together. And can I say shit on your podcast?
Yeah, that's fine.
Late. And then even after that, I didn't really get clued in about having a good microphone until like the last year or so. So I've been podcasting for like 3 years with like the worst mic. You know, like I think I was using like a blue snowball. Sometimes I wouldn't even use the mic. I would just use whatever was happening here on my headphones, and I didn't care because it was more fun I was not worried about that. And I didn't really consider myself to be professional. In fact, I still don't know that I'm a professional podcaster to this day, but I play one on TV. But but like I just wanted to sort of start, and so I just started, and then like I said, once I started, I went to a conference to learn more about it, and that's where I met Elsie Escobar, who I had known online for a short amount of time, and we sort of became, I don't want to say collaborators, but we became comrades, I guess. And there are a few other women comrades that sort of made me start the group. That was in June of 2014, and we also started a podcast with the same name, She Podcast, in June 2014. So we've been doing it 5 years, a little over 5 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, I
Oh,
love.
you asked me how things had changed. I forgot your question.
Well, hang on real fast, because I want to go back to exactly what you just said, because that is huge, because everyone that listens to this podcast is either just starting or they're trying to grow their podcast. But for you to just drop that huge nugget of, you didn't even care about equipment, like, because I feel like people stress about this so much. They're like, I have to have fancy this and fancy that, and I have to have these condensers and these mixers and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you don't. You just got to start, and you just got to keep going.
Yeah, I do have a mixer now, but I have no idea how to use it. It's sitting next to me. And what happened was, like, I had an editor who sent me the link. I bought it. Then when I got it, he hooked me up on Skype, and I showed him the buttons, and he told me what to touch to make it sound like normal. I don't even know if I still have the right settings. I'm sure it's been bumped around on this desk a couple times. Right. I don't even know if it's right, but somehow it sounds better. It must sound better than I did before, because using nothing, there's like just a little bit of an echo, or it didn't bother me, but my editor became our editor because it was bothering him. So he volunteered to start editing our show out of sheer just disgust with how it sounds. Terrible, but it's true.
Love it.
Just disgust with like how it sounded. Yeah. So you're right, though. I do think that people get really caught up. The one thing about podcasting that happens more now than it ever did with, actually, I think other podcasters do this. This is not my weakness, though, is that there are so many aspects of podcasting that will make you feel stuck. And Marie Forleo's B School, she used to call it, driving around the cul-de-sac. You can drive around the cul-de-sac a lot. Like, I don't know what my brand's going to be. I don't know what to call it. I don't know what mic to use. I don't know if I should get my own Facebook page, or if I should split them up, or if they should go together. There's a lot of ways you can just keep driving around in that circle. Whereas for me, I was just like, I'm just going to put it up and see what happens. Like, I'm not stopping for any cul-de-sac. Like, there's no problem that's going to keep me from doing it. But podcasting is one of those things where there's so many aspects of it that any one of those things can just keep you stuck and running in a circle. So it's true. You don't need to stop for any reason. You don't have a Facebook page yet? Oh, well, ski. You don't have a mic? Figure it out 3 episodes from now. You don't have a co-host? You're not sure what you want to talk about? There's tons of writing prompts out there. Just Google writing prompts, and you'll find something, I assure you, that will spark your interest and allow you to get started. I want my husband to start a podcast because he's got one of those voiceover voices. He's not an actor in any way, so he could never be a voiceover artist, but but he has like a kind of, I don't want to say hypnotic, but it's very deep, energetic voice. But he's like, oh, I don't know what I should talk about. It's like, who even cares what you talk about? I would just listen to you because you have a cool voice.
Right. Right.
I think there are a lot of people, especially women, who just struggle with like the final decision. And the final decision is not that big of an issue. It's the first decision to do it. And then everything else just sort of falls into place. Oddly, most likely, it will fall into place in some odd way.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Oh, that's such good wisdom, because I just, like you said, that creative cul-de-sac, like just getting stuck in equipment, and then, I have to have guests and I have to do this. And I'm like, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want to do. Like, it's your podcast.
Yeah.
And
I can't have a show because I have no way of booking guests.
Yeah.
Okay. You have an email address though, eh?
Right.
So then I guess you're all set.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a Facebook page yet, so I don't know who. Well, you're not looking for Facebook page likes. You're looking for listeners. So go find some listeners. Like it's zoom, 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 around and around.
Yeah. Well, I do want to go back to the other question that about just how's everything changed from when you first started to where we are today?
So when I first started, like I said, there were almost zero, let's just say zero women's interview shows. It was mine. And then shortly after I launched mine, and they did not copy me, they probably were just in the process same time as me, Biz Women Rock by Katie Kremitzos and the Biz Chicks podcast by Natalie Ekdahl. And ironically, we were all pregnant at the same time. When we met, we were in the first podcast movement in Dallas. We were all pregnant. Them with their first, no, I'm sorry. Natalie was having her third. I was having my third. Katie was with her first. So, and we were collaborators, and we would like call each other and ask each other questions. And actually, some of the people we were interviewing were like rounding the circuit, and there was just the three of us being like, "Have you interviewed this person? They're kind of terrible, or they're awesome," and we would pass them on to each other. I mean, the group and the She Podcast group now has 13,000 women in it, so definitely that has changed. I've also like just over the course of the last couple of months, I've been very lucky that women have, like such as yourself, have offered to have me on their show to help me promote an event that we're doing this fall. And I've noticed a lot of the practices that I used to teach are being, I don't want to say like, in other words, there's forms I'm filling out, and what is it when you do like consent forms about them owning the content, which like all this stuff that like I made up out of my head that is now common practice, which it makes me feel really happy because I'm a process obsessor. And so I never, and also like when I very first started, it didn't even occur to me actually when I first started that someone might see me having a podcast as me owning the content. So I just wanted to make sure we were clear that like you may be telling your story, but it is my content. I own this episode. And I've had arguments about that. You can't own my story. No, I don't own your story. You own your story. What I own is the piece of media you've created by telling it to me. Right. And that makes it, and also, by the way, you're giving me permission to use your headshot to market this in any way I choose for the rest of my life. That kind of stuff, because things can be hairy, and I wanted to keep everything friendly from start to finish. So if they just signed off knowing what their rights were, it was fine. But I made that stuff up in my head. I just wanted to cover my bases and make sure that we were both protected. I feel like there was a lot of types of shows that weren't happening back then. There was quite a bit of entrepreneurial shows, especially by men. Like I said, Entrepreneur on Fire, Smart Passive Income, Mixergy, School of Greatness. There's probably a few more. I didn't even really know about any storytelling podcasts, if there were some, and there must have been some.
Right.
NPR was taking their radio shows and just plucking them on iTunes. There were no special podcasts being made by NPR just for podcasting. The first one I remember that went somewhat mainstream was Serial, and that was in 2015. And everyone made a big deal about how Serial caused this huge podcasting surge. But there's been research that shows that podcasting increased from 2006 until 2017 incrementally by 3 or 4%. That did not change when Serial came around. There was not a huge bump of listeners. There may have been a huge bump of shows because everyone saw that and was like, I could do that. But before that, it was really just everyone's sort of out there doing their things. Some would monetize this way, someone monetize that way. People were lying about how many downloads they got, and they were selling advertising that probably wasn't worth what they were being charged for it, because people would just say, I have 1 million downloads an episode, and the advertisers would be like, all right, cool, here's a check, without checking.
Oh my gosh.
Just crazy stuff like that. And I mean, myself, like I had advertising on Lady Business Radio, but I never even looked at my downloads because people knew from me being an online entrepreneur that I had an audience, an email list, and Facebook and Twitter. So they, I said, well, I'll talk about your ad and I'll post it 3 times for like $150. And they'd be like, all right, and PayPal it to me. Never asked what downloads I have, never asked how many per episode in a 30-day, nothing like that. So I'm a firm believer that you can still monetize however you want, and it does not have to be based on IAB standards or advertise any kind of standards, because there's lots of different ways to advertise too. So, I mean, your podcast doesn't necessarily have to be your only commodity, but I think nowadays it's the one that's talked about the most is statistics, downloads, sponsors, and like pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. But there's so many other more interesting things that you can do on your show, like branded content or have the person on or just whatever, like do an unboxing of something on Instagram, like so many interesting things that have nothing to do with what we talk about now. So in that way it was very different. I also felt like the women in podcasting were scarce, not just hosts, because we've already covered that, but I felt like other shows, like if I wanted to be on other shows, it was like 8 men, a woman, 8 men, a woman. Or, you know, even when I went to start like a podcast ad agency, I remember very few of the women that were people who were wheeling and dealing with me were women. I felt like nobody really speaking. There were not very many women speakers at Podcast Movement or other conferences like that. So it's changed quite a bit.
Well, I like to
Luckily.
hear that because, yeah, I mean, it just sounds like you kind of got in the game when it was still really the Wild West of podcasting, you know, and it's just like, it's kind of, I feel like some of the aspects of it are like compartmentalized. Like, this is how you should do this. Like what you were talking about, like with people sending releases or, you know, guidelines or whatever, but you're like, we just made it up. And I still feel like a lot of people try to fit into this mold when they're just getting started. Well, you know, Pat Flynn does his show this way, and then so-and-so does this show this way, so I need to do it. And it's like, well, it's still completely up to you. So I love that you just said,
Yeah.
it's whatever you want to do.
Yeah, all that stuff I did just because I felt like doing it. There are absolutely still no rules. And I don't think there should be rules. I mean, I think best practices are usually good.
Right.
I mean, clearly with social media, we've learned that best practices are important. Otherwise, you just end up spamming everyone and their mother. And we don't want to become a medium that's more annoying than entertaining. So in that way, I agree. But podcasting is one of those things that works for everyone and everyone's schedule to do it however you want. You don't have to follow any rules about it. And even as they try to, like you said, compartmentalize and make things standardized, it's not going to be easy because who's to say how I do a show versus how you do a show? I mean, like,
Right.
I really compare podcasting a lot to YouTube. Like, you can say, like, you can actually be Comedy Central or you can say you're funny, but you don't have to adhere to the same rules whatsoever. Because
Right.
one is a cable channel and one is you in your basement.
Right.
And you don't get to decide what all of us do. Like, we don't get to decide what they do. They don't get to decide what we do. And there's not even a comparison there.
Yeah. And Jessica and I don't need people telling us we have to wear pants and do our hair and our makeup to do a podcast.
I did actually wear pants today, but it's rare.
I love it.
They're not pajama pants.
I love it. Well, I want to get into, I want to learn more about the She Podcast community and kind of how y'all have developed this. So you and Elsie, y'all have kind of created this community together. Y'all have been collaborating. And so one of my questions I want to know is what's like the number one thing that you see female podcasters really struggling with?
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
I think probably the number one is pulling the trigger. I see a lot of procrastination in pulling that trigger. And I think even if they have confidence, you can be afraid of success just as much as failure. And people are afraid they're going to have the next brilliant idea and they'll just be bombarded with fans and success. And that's just as scary as never being heard.
Right.
So I think pulling the trigger is one of them. I think I mean, there are a lot of questions about growth in the group. Like, how do I grow? How do I use Facebook ads to grow? How do I use Instagram? How do I use Twitter? What's the fastest way you guys have grown? Fast, grow, grow, grow. And I don't even know if that's the right question, because I feel like the right question should be like, how do I get people addicted? How do I make sure that my content is so compelling that they just need more of it at a faster pace? Because growing is like useless, it's the same as collecting likes and friends on Facebook. Like, that is so useless. If you have 200 people that are hanging on your every word, that's way better than 2,000 people who barely know your name.
Right.
And I feel like the same is true there. So how do I grow is less important than how do I make my stuff meaningful. On the other hand, there are people who ask that question that get answers and don't implement them. And that makes me crazy too. It's like, I want to grow. Okay. We have to post on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You have to ask questions in your group. Oh no, I'm not doing any of that. That's ridiculous. Well, okay. Cool. Why don't you just open your toilet and scream into it and then flush? That's the same thing. Don't tell. I have this podcast where I'm changing the world. I want people to become change agents. I want them to be activists. Well, are you posting anywhere? No, because I feel like I'm bothering people. Cool.
Yeah.
Then now you're bothering me. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Like I can't help you if you're not going to tell anybody what you're doing. And it's just silly to try and implement. Silly to implement change to nobody.
Right.
You have to tell somebody. That's what activists do. They scream in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love that. Because it's just, Jessica's getting all fired up. Hang on, we gotta get resituated.
I gotta sit on my foot now.
But it's so true, because I feel like women, we just struggle with this so much more, and it annoys me so much because I have met so many amazing women, and I haven't been doing this as long as you have, but I know that there are women out there who are saying, God, I want to share my message. God, I want to do this. And I just want to, be an activist. I want to reach more people, but I'm afraid I'm bothering people. Or if I put this out on social media, then, someone's going to get turned off by it. And then I have the exact opposite reaction. I think you're doing a disservice if you don't tell people about it, because you're adding value to their life. Yeah. If you stand up and you say, look at me, no one wants to see that. But if you say, man, this resource, this one thing could help, catapult you into the next whatever, then check it out. So I'm happy to hear that you say that, because I feel like women are finally saying, I need help in this area. And I'm so happy that your group is there, because I've found so much value personally in the women and the sense of community that's there. But I don't know. I hope that this is something that changes.
I hope so too. I mean, I also think there's something ingrained in, like, I've had the same problem even today. Like, I have the event ticket prices are going up today, and I have a slew of people that are dying to help me with giant audiences that want to help promote. And it's like, what is taking me so long to get this email out? Why have I not just given them the link? But it's like, I need it to be perfect. So this is the same thing with the cul-de-sac, where I'm like, well, I want to send them the link, but I don't have any graphics. Let me make a graphic real quick. An hour goes by. I have a call, come back to it. And I'm like, what was I doing again? Oh yeah, I need this graphic. And then maybe I should do some click to tweets. By the time it's sent out, it's 9 p.m.
Right. And
they have one day to do the thing that they've, that I need them to do. It's just silly. But there is a part of me, I think, that's like, don't send it yet. Or it's almost like inviting people to talk to you. And if you are a little introverted, every email you send is an invitation for someone to talk to you. And it can feel a little scary, especially when it's like 4,000, 5,000, 12,000 people.
Right.
Twitter too. It's like, I can schedule stuff on Twitter, but I have 12,000 followers. And I know they're not all going to answer me at once, but there is some element of, I can't keep up if they respond.
Right.
It's scary. It can feel a little scary. So, I don't know. It's just, the trick, I think, is just pushing through. I don't think everyone has these feelings, but I mean, if you do, I'm just saying they're normal. I just force myself to push through it. Like, get out of your head. And instead you have to do this like mindset activity of like, I'm ready to receive what the universe has to give. Send it, just send it. And then hopefully it all works out.
Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Just close your eyes and push the button.
Push publish.
I'm taking my own advice today. I swear.
I think we both needed to hear this. Like, this is just for you and I right now.
The same way too.
Yes.
The same way too, where it's like, I'm not shy,
Right.
but also why am I procrastinating in giving people what they want when they're asking if they can help promote me? It's the stupidest thing.
Right.
And it's not because I don't want them to do it. I don't even know what it is. It's just weird.
Yeah. I think it's probably a form of, we can hide behind like our perfectionism too, because we know that it's going to be so amazing and it's going to help so many people. And you're like, I have this almost like persona that I want to portray with the brand. And it's like, people expect, especially when, once you get to your level, you do have followers, you have like a lot of people counting on you. So it's like, I can't just send out this crappy little email, it's got to be on brand with what we
can't look like I did it on Fiverr. I have to, like put an effort into it. And then because of that pressure, I have no creative juice. Like I've been doing all my own graphics up until now. And this past month, I'm just like, I have nothing left. I don't know what to say on a Facebook ad. I don't know how to put it together. I just don't know. Here's a graphic. And you can see clearly that that's my thought process, because it's like statement, date, butterfly. Send it out. I have nothing left to give.
But I love it so much because you're so authentic in what you do and how you present yourself online. So I think that you're to the point you can get away with it because people know. It
does help when you screw things up that you're being authentic.
Yeah.
Because then you can just say, y'all, I just screwed this up. Ta-da!
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Yep. Yeah. It's true. It's true. It is the benefit of being authentic is that when you make mistakes or are having a hard time, you can just tell people and they'll either support you or you don't even have to care like what they think.
Right. Right. Because and that's the same thing, I tell a lot of people with podcasting, it's like some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you, and it's okay. It's totally fine because you're going to find those people. So do you have any experience with that? Like as you've been in the industry for a while, like anything that's like that you've, I don't know, my watch just talked to me. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh dear.
Like what just happened? But have you had any experience with that? Like personally, where you've just kind of have to just let it go, like not let it affect you?
Oh my God. Everything every day. Really? I mean, that's a very broad question. If you mean, like there have been instances where I've been misunderstood on podcasts and had to try and explain myself, which also didn't work. And I ended up having to yank an episode because it was offensive, even though I certainly didn't intend to ever offend anyone. And but it made me, I guess whatever I said made me look racist, or people misinterpreted it as a racist thing. And I was, the thing that I said was, I was talking about having to explain to a racist person about Black Lives Matter so that they could understand. But the way that I explained it was, even though I very specifically said this is for a stupid person to understand, it's still, they didn't like the comparison or anyway. So I tried to explain it. That made me look stupider. And I just ended up yanking the episode because I was trying to make the point of like, sometimes you have to say stupid things to get people to understand the importance of what, because they can't comprehend that on their own. Anyway, it was misunderstood. I had to take it down. I was very unhappy. And I just ended up doing like a post online where I talked about being misunderstood and how it made me feel. And then I just kind of let it go. It's kind of like you just have to take a breath and know yourself. And actually this just happened to a friend of mine 2 days ago. This person was a male moderator on an all-female panel. And you can look at my group right now, Crystal, if you'd like. They're being shredded for cutting people off while they were talking. And this person is a very fast talker, a very smart man, a very passionate person, definitely not sexist or chauvinistic whatsoever. But when you're the only male moderator on a panel full of women, you got to say, I don't mean to cut you off, but you can't just be like, yeah, but that looks like you're talking over them. And he's absolutely shredded in my group right now. And I totally get it. But I also get it because I understand where his intention was, which was like excitement, not, well, you have boobs, therefore you're an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
like those two don't go together, but people who don't know him are never going to get that. Also, he's in a more of a position of power. He's a well-known podcaster, very well-known, in fact. And it makes him in a kind of a precarious position. But sort of what I said to him was the same thing. Like, you know yourself, your friends know you. Anyone who thinks that you're this now because of this experience is an idiot.
Right.
People love to be offended, and that's kind of a shame, because if we just took 1 second and thought about human behavior and intention, we would realize how few people are actually trying to offend someone when they open their mouth. Do you know what I mean? Like, our president aside, most people are not trying to be divisive, offensive, and hateful.
Right.
Period. So, yeah, so that kind of stuff I've had to let go. I just stopped doing a comedy show with one of my best friends from college and my producer, because they like talking about political things. And first of all, I hate politics. I never like talking about politics. It's always a mistake when I start talking about politics. But then the more I work on a high profile project that involves so many other people besides just me, not just attendees, but the more sponsors say yes, the more I represent them in some way. They show up to my event and I represent them. So if it's Spotify and Adobe and bigger names like that, I can't have my name attached to a podcast where we're discussing whether or not Chick-fil-A is on the right track with who they donate money to. Like that, like, I don't want to have anything to do with that conversation, right or wrong.
Right.
I don't want to have anything to do, like, our show's in Atlanta this year. And we decided that about 2 weeks before they made a rule about abortion there. And like, I don't want to talk about that either. Like, I am not in a position to take a stand about those things. I don't intend to take it. I mean, I know my own position and I'd gladly tell anyone who asks, but that doesn't mean that my show, podcast, or event needs to stand for any kind of political thing or be attached to any political thing. And I think people have really tried hard to attach me to those things. And I have to try really hard to say no and then let it go if they don't like it.
Yeah. Well, I just love it. And I think that it just goes back to your authenticity, you know, like the people who really know you and really care and really follow you, you know, the people that have stuck by you, you know, if you go through something hard like that, then I think that those are the voices that matter. Those are the people that you listen to. And then like, you don't even care about the people, because there are trolls out there and they're going to find you. They find everybody, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. Like, they don't matter.
Like, I know that I had this conversation on my show and that the other person besides me didn't agree with me. But if you think for 1 second that I'm cool with homophobia or shutting down abortion and safe abortion for women, that is literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard. There's no way in hell I would have outlooks that hurt other people for any reason at any time. So anyone who would attach my name to those things simply because something's attached there, like, it's the stupidest thing ever. But that said, some people do feel those things, and I don't want to make them feel like they can't be in my presence or that I'm judging them. I'm not. It's just those are my opinions, but they don't have to be. Our group doesn't have to stand for conservative or liberal or Christian or not Christian or non-religious, you know, just whatever. I want our group to be for everyone that has a voice and a message and something to say. I want it to be for everyone to figure out how to get their message out. You know, aside from hateful Nazis, I'm pretty sure I would support whatever people want to talk about. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that this is such a great conversation to have, because it kind of gives people, you know, if they're just starting their podcast and let's say they start one and it totally blows up, this kind of gives them like a window into, these are some of the things that you will face at some point, whether it comes to brands and sponsors telling you, well, you have to say something this way to this specific audience, or, you know, like you said, with your event and everything like that. So I appreciate you just sharing your wisdom with dealing with this crap, because I mean, it's just, it's
like once a year.
You know?
I mean, it is going to happen. It's like once a year. And for the record, I would never let a brand tell me what I could and couldn't say.
Right.
Similarly, I'm not going to let my audience tell me what I can or can't say, because in my heart, I know I'm not a hateful person. So if someone tries to attach me to hateful thoughts and hateful inferences and hateful outlooks on things, they're just going to look stupid. I've never said anything but loving things about any group, and I will always be that way because that's just how I am. I'm like the biggest hippie known to man. Everyone knows that. Just because I don't dress like Elsie doesn't mean I'm not a hippie. I am.
I love it. I love it. So, okay. Well, my next question is, so why an event? So we've kind of, hinted a few times already, you have this amazing group, you have this amazing community. And so I just want to know, like, what made y'all just sit down and say, you know what, we're going to create this event for female podcasters. And so it's kind of a two-part question. So why did you create the event, and what makes it different from other podcast events?
Good questions, both. So first of all, there was no y'all sitting down. I wanted to do an event. Elsie wants nothing to do with doing an event. In fact, I have been talking about it since we started She Podcast 5 years ago. I was pregnant. She had 2 small children. I think she thought I would just let the idea fade away. So she entertained the notion like, yeah, that'll be great. And then like slowly just pray for me to like drop it. And since I didn't, we would start to discuss it and see what she would. It started to become clear to me that planning with her was going to be difficult because she would say things like, I want it to be accessible to everyone. So I was like, cool, we'll make the prices under $100 and we'll have 5,000 people. And she was like, well, I also kind of want it to be like an intimate show. And I'm like, well, now we're making $30. What are you doing to me right now? This is not going to work. And so we would have not really an argument, but it would be clear to me that the time wasn't right, or we didn't have the right ideas together. And until finally, I just was like, I really wanted to do it, and I didn't want to wait anymore for anyone's permission. I would have liked to use She Podcast, but if she was going to say no, I would have just done women's podcasting event and called it something else.
Right.
Because I just really wanted to do it. Like our meetups at other conferences, our in-person, I see a mosquito, sorry. That's really distracting me because if it bites me, I'm going to be pissed. Sorry. Feel free to edit it. But yeah, so I just like when we have those in-person experiences and the hugging and the people who, I mean, it's not even an ego boost, but I see people loving on each other in an intellectual way. You're so smart. You're so interesting. That's such a good idea. You look great. You're so cool. I love meeting you in person. This is so much fun. Like I am the recipient, but I also see others being the recipient of that. And like an hour's never enough. It's never enough to talk about all the things we want to talk about. It's never enough to impart as much wisdom as you want to say the things that people ask you about, to let them respond with their own wisdom. It's never enough time. And it was just driving me insane. So after PodFest this year, I was like, you know what? I have to do it. I have to do this event. So I put up the Kickstarter like the next day. And I was like, let's just do it, because it wasn't even having anything to do with PodFest. In fact, the creator of PodFest is helping me. He's my planning consultant. It's just that it's a dude is in charge. The branding is navy blue. The hotel is okay. The food is grab your own, which I'll probably have to, because now I know it's expensive as hell to have food. But like, I just wanted ambiance that felt special. I wanted a pace that felt leisurely. I wanted it to be, I'm controlling. I wanted it to be the way I wanted it to be. I don't want it to start at 8 o'clock. I don't want it to end at 11 o'clock. I want one or the other. You want to start it at 8? Things got to be over by 7. Let us go to bed. Stop having parties all night. Like, just whatever. Like, I just was starting to feel like, it's the same thing with how I started my podcast. Like, I see all the men are doing it. La-di-da. You're doing a great job. But what about the rest of us that don't want stress balls in the colors of orange and gray? What if some of us want some freaking sequins and feathers? What if some of us want a little glitter? What if some of us want a lipstick in our bag instead of another pen? Or just whatever, what if it would be cool if like we had like a spa in the hotel, God forbid, or like somewhere to get a manicure in between whatever we're doing. Like, I just wanted us to have our own. And also, and I know it's not just me, and I've been hearing this a couple of times, but there are times when I'm at co-ed events where I feel if I raise my hand in a session because I have a question and other people's hands are raised, subconsciously, I feel like if some of them are male, it's a competition. Who's going to get asked first? Is that man going to take up all the rest of the time explaining their whole life story? And I mean, not to say that I've never done that. I'm sure I've hogged a Q&A session. I'm sure of it.
I'm just laughing because I've been in the exact situation you're talking about.
No,
so
guys raising their hand, and he's just going to talk and waste everybody's time because he's so important. And that sounds so, I know I sound sexist as well. But every woman listening to this knows they've been stuck in a situation at a meeting, at a family event, where some blowhard is taking up all the time and you're way more interesting than them, period. And it's finally time that we get to hear how interesting the rest of us are without having to compete, without having to be stepped in front of, without having to be, wait, one more question, without having to feel like, because I'm 5'2" and the two people talking are 5'10" and happen to be male, that no one would even notice me down here with my hand raised, that kind of thing. Like, I know it sounds like we need a chance too, but I feel like it would be a fun experience just for 3 days to not think about that stuff.
Right.
So there are some men in the industry that make jokes every time I see them about like, oh, are you going to put like a machete in your swag bag so you can kill all the men that try to come in? And it's like, well, no. I mean, I have 2 sons and a husband. So no, I don't hate men. It's just that if a man wants to show up, they know what kind of environment they're walking into. It's a respectful environment where everyone is equal. There will be men attending, and it's going to be quite an eye-opener, I think.
Right.
Not because we're going to rule the school or whatever, but just because they'll know what it's like to feel like a minority.
Right.
And to feel like maybe one time their explanation and their experience isn't as valid as everyone else's in the room. Like, I think that's a good lesson for all men to learn. As a matter of fact, I welcome all of you to attend.
Well, I just love that you've shared so much about the women that you've collaborated with, because I think it's super important. I mean, you've talked about being pregnant all together or having babies all together.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
Something I see a lot is, women saying, well, this is my side hustle. I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, me too. I've got 3 kids. 2 of them are at school, and like I have one home with me. He's supposed to be napping right now. Like, I got my fingers crossed, hoping that it's going to work.
Is he still napping?
I hope so.
You
But I'm just saying, it's like a lot of guys, like they can't relate because that's not really the norm. Like where we are in the United States, like it's becoming a lot more common for guys to stay at home with their kids. But for most of us women, like we kind of just got to bootstrap it and do what we can. So I love to listen to you and then other women that you're collaborating with, because it gives other women who are just kind of curious about podcasting, they can see themselves in what you and I are doing. It's like, yeah, if you want to do it, you can do it too. So,
stay-at-home moms podcast, because they have so much more to say than did you wipe your butt?
Right. Yeah.
And like, who's to say that's a side hustle, what they're doing? I mean, your brains are not being utilized to their full potential with a stay-at-home mom gig usually. And why should you not deserve the same kind of mental stimulation as people with a full-time job without the benefit of all that stress?
Right.
So you kind of have the best of both worlds. I feel like stay-at-home mom podcasters, maybe we should say stay-at-home mom casters. I kind of like that.
We got it. Trademark. We're trademarking that right here in the episode.
but because like this way you get to have these stimulating, exciting conversations with people that you admire. You get to impart your wisdom.
Right.
And then you can turn it off, in your workout clothes and go do some yoga, pick up your kid, make dinner, do what you got to do. It's almost like it's like a great way to have the best of both worlds without, I guess, the benefit of a salary and benefits. You know what I mean? But like,
right.
But I mean, if you can have a stay-at-home gig, male or female, and still have like a podcast or a side hustle or a business like that, I say do it. I've been trying to retire my husband for 2 years so that I could bring home the bacon, so to speak, and he can cook it and take care of the kids, because he's way more nurturing than me, and I'm a terrible cook, and he's awesome.
Well, that's good.
And also I had kids really young, so like I don't get to, there's a lot that I had to do when I stayed home for the first time, when all my friends, I felt like were like soaring ahead of me in their careers. Now that I have a chance, I would love for him to, he's been hustling all this time. I'd like for him to like sit down for a second.
Right.
Which I think he's finally willing to do. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Hooray for all the stay-at-home parents.
Yes. Well, Jessica, this has just been so much fun. And I actually want to get a little bit more into She Podcast. I want to learn all about your event, the specific dates and everything where people can get registered. But I wanted to see, are you up for a few rapid fire questions real fast?
Always. I love the rapid fire. Let's
yes. Okay. So do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Yes.
You do?
But only with work.
Only with work. So do you with podcasting?
Yes. No. No, not with podcasting. No, because like I said, I don't really consider myself to be a professional podcaster. I don't know enough about audio, but it's why video was so difficult for me, because I am more professional, more skilled in video editing. It's also why all the graphics have to look perfect. It's why the event is going to have to look perfect. But like, I'm not a perfectionist at being a mom. I'm not about being a wife. I'm not about being a housekeeper, a cook. I'm not a perfectionist. I don't give a crap if any of that's perfect. Right. And I don't give a crap if I'm perfect, but if I'm working on something and it's going to affect other people, then yeah, that has to be perfect.
Okay. Well, that's good. I like that perspective. So who would be your dream podcast guest?
God, the first two names that ran through my head were Oprah and then Mark Maron. That is so bizarre. But like, I don't know why Oprah, but I immediately put that out of my head. Mark Maron, I think, because I just admire his, like, the beginnings of just doing Out of Your Garage. He was like sort of a failed stand-up comic and couldn't really get a job acting. And now he's like this brilliant podcaster. And he found an element or a niche that worked with his curmudgeon-y personality, and people love it. And then, right. But actually, I do think that my idea would be Howard Stern. And I know that's probably surprising, but he is one of the most brilliant interviewers I've ever heard. He also gives 0 Fs about what kind of comedy he's creating. If he thinks it's funny, he doesn't give a shit if you think it's funny or not. And I think that's the way to go if you're trying to be funny.
Right.
There's just so much I would want to ask him about. Like, he's been also doing it for like 30 years. He's moved from different networks. He's now on a, on-demand network. Like, but also just all the in-depth stuff. I'd want to know, like, who the worst interviewer was, who gave him a hard time, who kept canceling. Like, I want to know all the shitty stuff that he doesn't talk about.
Right. The inside scoop.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. My last rapid fire question for you is, what's one piece of advice you would want to give to a brand new podcaster?
Okay. My one piece of advice to you, my friend and fellow podcaster, my brand new friend, is stop worrying about success and worry about where you want your life to be in 5 years. Because if that is wealth, then you need to think about how you're going to make money once, your podcast gets started, because it's not a tool for making money. It's not internet marketing. Podcasting is a bridge from you to your listener. And if you want your listener to give you something, they have to get something in return that isn't necessarily your content. So what are you giving them? Are you giving them knowledge? Are you giving them wisdom? Or are you giving them courses? Or are you giving them entertainment? And if you are giving them entertainment, whatever it is you want to give them, you have to give it to them in other ways besides just your podcast. Live shows, memberships, t-shirts, whatever. It doesn't even matter what it is. But what kind of business do you ultimately want to have? Because podcasting is not a business. It's a bridge to a business. And there's a big, big difference.
That's so good. I couldn't have said that anyway. I totally have that exact same belief. And you just said that so perfectly. So thank you so much. But tell us where can we buy tickets? When is She Podcast? Give us all the good stuff.
She Podcast is the 11th through the 13th of October, this October 2019 in Atlanta, Georgia. It's going to be at the Atlanta Marriott Marquis, which is a world-class 5-star hotel. And we have it room blocks at a really good price. So I'm very excited about that. Over 100 brilliant, incredible, edutaining women speakers. We meant to say educational and entertaining. I hate the word edutaining. So pardon me because I just said that. But they are successful. They have done all the things that you guys are trying to learn how to do. And so I've made sure that every single one is doing a topic that they have wildly succeeded in. It's also going to be a colorful, fun, nurturing, supportive environment where you get to learn every single aspect of what you're trying to master at this point in your podcasting game, whether it is starting, refining your content, adding community, growing, and accomplishing goals. So you can go to shepodcastslive.com. And we also have a free Facebook group if you just want to see what the group's all about. And that's facebook.com/group/shepodcasts. So please feel free to check it out. Crystal, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun. This interview has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I was just so excited that, you had this thing going on. I'm actually really upset because I'm going to be in San Diego like the week after. So I won't get to do this She Podcast event, but I'm coming.
Yeah, it's October 15th next year.
October 15th. Get it on your calendars right now, y'all. Go ahead and block it off. You're going to go next year. So thank you so much, Jessica, for everything that you shared with us today.
Thanks.
Wow, that conversation, it was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Jessica had posted in her She Podcast group, which you absolutely need to join on Facebook. It's such an awesome community. If you're a podcaster looking to find some other people that can collaborate or can answer some of your questions, it's just such a great place to hang out. And honestly, if you are one of those people that just likes to be a fly on the wall in Facebook groups, it's a great place to do that too, because there's always great conversations, there's great questions being asked, and that's where you can find more information about all of the She Podcast events. And I am just so blown away by this conversation, the nuggets of wisdom that were around just having fun with it and giving yourself some grace and not worrying about all the perfectionist things that we get wrapped up in, right? Like, is your equipment right? Do I have the right this or the right that? Am I doing this the right way? Just get started. That's my number one takeaway from this conversation with Jessica is just go out there, do the thing, get started, and then you'll figure the rest of it out. We totally get wrapped up in having, everything a certain way, and, it needs to be this way before I can hit publish, or this way before I hit record, or this or that, or I need a website, I need this. Just get started. Get started, and I promise you will start figuring so much of it out if you just get started. So that does it for today's episode. I would love for you to go check out the show notes for today and go check out the She Podcast Live event. I have all the links that Jessica mentioned at crystalprofit.com/episode 79. And you can find everything you need to know there. And make sure that you're signed up for the free 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp. And also, y'all, Profit Podcasting opens tomorrow. If you're listening to this in real time, the course opens tomorrow, and it's only going to be open for 10 days. So make sure that you're signed up, you are ready to go, because this is going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. I've been working my butt off on this course, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so much fun. You're going to learn how to launch your podcast, to start it, to market it, and all the things that you need to know in 30 days. So I'm really excited, and I've been hearing really cool things in the community. So I'm so amped up. I'm so pumped up. So let me know if you have any questions about any of it, but you can find more information about the course at profitpodcasting.com, or I will link to everything in the show notes. But that does it for today. So subscribe to the show if you're a brand new listener. I would love for you to see all the other fun things we're going to be talking about pretty soon, because I've got some really cool guests coming, and we're going to have fun. That's what we do around here. We're going to have so much fun. But remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.
Hey, Profit Podcast listeners, thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, "Send Crystal a text message." And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal, it could be totally anonymous, or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of fan mail shout outs.